Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all here. This is a panel about Portugal photography. I think it's very positive to see that the audience is relatively filled, which is good. This is happening at 1 p.m., so I was actually afraid that all the Portuguese would run away, because this is our sacred lunchtime, unlike what happens in other countries. So first of all, thank you to everyone from Portugal for sacrificing your lunchtime, and to everyone else. Well, this is a panel where we'll talk about Portugal photography, Portuguese photographers, and also about the influence of the Portugal culture in art expression in other parts of the world. It's a shame that we have this kind of weather. We are used to extremely pleasant sunrise, so I hope that some of you aren't here also to escape the bad weather. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you guys here. And I would like, first of all, to ask you to put your hands up to who loves Portugal and who loves Portuguese culture. Hands up? Okay, I'm liking it. This means I can continue the panel and it won't be cancelled. And I'm saying this because I was actually planned to run 2 consecutive panels today. One about Portugal photography and the next one would be about mental health. But unfortunately, it was cancelled, the mental health, because due to unforeseen circumstances, some of the therapists couldn't make it. So I just couldn't go on with it. So I think this one is approved, and obviously, let's go. Today, obviously, I will wear the photographer's hat and not the doctor's hat. And my name, first of all, it's José Ramos. It's pronounced in Hispanic José Ramos or Jose. People always struggle with my name when I try to tell it. I'm a landscape photographer. I'm also a psychiatrist. I'm a storyteller, and I'm also deeply passionate about the psychedelic renaissance, both in the social and the medical field. I entered the NFT space in around September 2021, and I've been on this insane roller coaster since then. And as you can see, I'm here for the long run, even coordinating this awesome panel with these beautiful people. So I would like to thank NFC for this opportunity. The organization was extremely inclusive by allowing the Portuguese community to be a part of this, and also to allow us to exhibit our own works. There's this story that I just wanted to mention before I introduce the panel, which is related with how this all started between our relationship and my relationship with NFC. And it's curious because I entered the NFT space in September 2021, like I told you. And in January 2022, Jean-Michel Payon, which is a big photography collector, he collected one of my pieces on Foundation. I sent him a DM to thank him and ask him if he had ever been to Lisbon. He all of a sudden tells me, yeah, I'm going there for NFC. And I had no idea what NFC was at the time. I tried to talk with a lot of friends from the Portuguese community. We have some big chat groups, and no one knew what was NFC. I told this very diplomatically to Jean-Michel, and he immediately put me in touch with John Karp, which is the organizer of this event. And 1 week later, we were doing a video call, and we started a friendship since then. And since then, fortunately, NFC has always given us time both to talk about our images and also to show them. Maximilian, obviously, which is running the panels, has been a total legend and helped us a lot with all of this, so thank you for the opportunity. So, after this introduction, I'm honored to be joined by very talented people. I have next to me Ana Isabel Hewlett, I have Vitor Esteves, Matt Humphrey, and Bernardo Carla. I would like you, first of all, each one of you to do a small introduction. Tell me, what do you do? Where are you from? Obviously, most of you are from Portugal, but we have a special guest. And we can start with you, Anna.
Okay, so my name is Anna Isabel Hewlett, and I'm a fine art portrait photographer. I was born in the Azores Islands in Portugal, but 2 hours by plane from here, but still Portugal. I've been very influenced since my childhood by nature, and so that also plays a big role in my portrait photography. I've joined the NFT space in March 2021, and it was also then that I minted my very first NFT, and I'm really happy to be here and be joined by so many friends and new faces. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Victor. I'm also from Portugal. Not here from Lisbon, but a city up north, 2 hours drive from here. I'm here as a photographer, although sometimes I don't consider that. I'm more of a photo enthusiast. My main job, it's not related to photography, like José. But I started taking photography more seriously around 12, 13 years ago. And since then, it always have been like an outlet from my main job, my daily job. I focus on landscape photography, mainly aerial, since the past 6, 7 years. I took that kind of photography as my main goal to improve and to learn. I guess about the NFT space, I had some failed attempts to get into it during 2021 until roughly the same time as José, September 2021, through some friends from Instagram that helped me to make that step. And now, after 2 years, here we are, and riding the wave and see how it goes.
Hello, my name's Matt Humphrey. I'm a photographer, and as you can probably tell, I'm the ringer. I am not Portuguese, but I'm British. But I am a big fan of Portuguese culture. I specialize in street photography and portraiture, and more recently I've been doing a lot of experimental film photography, which you will find out it's kind of how I got to be on this panel. I've been in the NFT space for maybe 18 months now, about the same time as José, and it's completely changed my life as an artist for many positive reasons. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here today and with friends and new friends, and yeah, thank you for coming.
Hello everyone, my name is Bernardo. I'm here as a collector. I came into the space in crypto first in around 2018, and then I shifted my interests to the NFT community. I'm Portuguese, I'm from here, and what I do is, apart from collecting, I'm trying to build communities and try to bring the Portuguese culture a little bit beyond our barriers that we have, and that's what I'm going to talk about, the projects that I've been trying to put in the space.
Very well, and you'll get the opportunity to know all about this fascinating project at the second half of the presentation. So now I'd like to give some focus to our talented speakers. I'm gonna start with you, Anna, obviously. We have met for many years. We have been friends for many, many years. Quite interestingly, we met through the heavy metal circuit of Portugal, by very different means than usual. And then we found each other in DeviantArt on the famous online community, where it all started for me in photography and probably for you. So then we re-encountered ourselves on the NFT space. Anna is extremely active and a great figure of the NFT space. I'm a big fan of your work. You have beautiful portrait photography. You can see on the slideshow images from Anna, portraits made in Portugal and in the UK, and also landscapes from Vitor from Portugal, and also mine from Portugal. So Anna, my first question, naturally, I would like to ask you, how does the Portuguese culture inspire your work, what you do, and how does it influence the concepts that you use and the aesthetic that you use?
I think that the Portuguese culture actually influenced me in many ways in 3 main points, and all of them are part of my photography. First, of course, I'm from the Azores. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, so I'm very influenced by the nature there. And also, Portugal is a country full of stories and legends, and that is another part of it, because I use a lot of fantasy in my work. And of course, being such a, and you, José, and you, my friends, you know too, that it's quite a patriarchal culture in Portugal, so that influenced...
I'll ask you about that later.
Yeah, that influenced the women empowerment in my work. So I'll start with the nature. So being from the Azores, it's very hard not to be touched by the wild and volcanic nature of it all. So in my portraits, I always have, or usually always try to do it in nature. It's the scene that plays. And then because Portugal is full of stories and legends, books were always a big part of my childhood. So I even wanted to be a writer before I found photography, and that's why I went to DeviantArt.
Okay, so
to show my the things I used to write. So, but then I found photography in 2006, and I never came back. So now I tell my stories through my art, through my photography. And it is also the way that I try to empower others, especially women. Like I was saying, we have quite a patriarchal culture, and for me, giving freedom to women and for them to feel confident has always been something that came from me, like natural. It came naturally. I didn't think this is what I'm gonna do. You know, this is not something I planned, this is what I'm gonna do my photography, but it came naturally to me. So, yeah, those are the 3 big points. So I guess Portuguese culture influenced me a lot. I mean, it wouldn't be the same if I wasn't born in where I was, so.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, and obviously nature for all of us, especially you, born in Azores, which is a paradise, it would always influence your output, right?
Yeah, because since I was a child, my world view was like painted in a way of blue and green, because I have the ocean right in front of my house, just walk 10 minutes, and then the sky, you always have beautiful colors, and of course you just need to look back from my house, and there's the misty mountains, real deep green, so that's always had to be part of me, so.
Of course, and you spoke about something very important that I had already planned to obviously ask you, because it's an important part of your work. You are an activist. You are someone who tries to balance what we call gender inequality, and you fight for women empowerment. Actually, some of your creations show that and are part of that. So I just wanted to ask you, in the context of this panel, and you already mentioned the patriarchal tendency of our society. How do you think the Portuguese culture has influenced that in you? And what kind of work have you been doing regarding this subject?
For me, I don't know, because my mom, it also has to do with my mom, right? Because she was born during a time where women didn't have many rights as we have now here in Portugal. So she always taught me to be independent woman. And I always try to bring that in my work, like the way I photographed, at least that's the way I see it. Although you have that fantasy and fairy tale part to it, I always try that my women look strong and confident, like they have an inner strength. So, but to be honest, like I was saying at the beginning, this is not something that I thought, I'm gonna do this. People came to me after and said, you do this. Like, I look at your photo, especially in NFTs, because actually before I joined NFTs, I was making a living of photographing everyday women, where I would do like a fashion shoot experience for them, get a makeup artist, provide them with dresses. So they would go through the whole thing, and these are everyday women, and I wanted to make them feel confident. And it's amazing when you see that transformation, when they see themselves in the photo. It's even before I edit them. It's beautiful. And then when I joined NFTs, and people also came to me and said that looking at my work, for example, I think you showed Inanna, which was my... Yeah? Okay, so I had Inanna, I'm not sure she's gonna show, but it was the model that she's painted in red. Sorry if I painted in red, and that was my very first NFT, and people, women especially, would come to me like and say, when I look at that work, it's like I feel like I'm a goddess. And I started to realize the power that our art has. Like, I came to realize that something that I created, and I'm still surprised by that, that something I created for me, for myself, would have an impact on people that way. And I think for us artists, no matter what you are photographing, I think that is the beauty of it, right? You can impact people and bring emotions on them. And sometimes we create for ourselves, like all of us, but...
Sorry, there it is.
Yeah, that one. So that was my very first NFT, which was collected by Jamison, a really amazing collector. But yeah, so I think that is the beauty of art, is that you can bring emotions in people, and sometimes quite transformative without us realizing.
I loved hearing that, because actually one of the main virtues of the NFT space, when we forget all of the FOMO, all of the money issues, the bear markets, the bull markets, is the focus on the stories and the community and the empowerment. And it's very interesting that NFT kind of channeled your creations towards being more active in this field. Last but not least, I heard a secret that I'm going to reveal, that you have a future project, very interesting, which will be based on the Portuguese mythology, which most people don't know, which is probably very rich. I don't know too much about it too. So I just wanted, before we move on to Vitor, and for the landscape world, I just wanted you to speak about this future project and relationship with Portuguese mythology.
Yeah, of course. But before I do that, can I mention about another thing about women empowerment? Like one thing that I also try to do, and this is because of my NFT story, I founded a group in also March 2021 called NFT Goddesses. Some of them are here in the audience. They're my... sorry, I'm getting emotional because I love them so much. And yeah, so we got together. It's like a sisterhood. Any woman artist in the space can join. And it's a community where together we create projects for the social good. So one of them being Peace Mir, where we were able to raise 8.7 Ethereum for humanitarian aid to Ukraine. So I'm very proud of them. So I wanted to mention.
This deserves an applause.
And yeah, so answering now your question.
It was a perfect deviation from my main question. I'm glad you mentioned it. You just created a beautiful video moment to be posted in the future about your beautiful project.
Thank you. So about my project. So this project, not the part of the Portuguese mythology, but I started a project about based on different mythologies from different cultures. Some of them you saw there, like Inanna, and maybe Kali as well, which was called Witches and Seers, as a way to show the feminine side in a positive way. Because, for example, Medusa was always seen in a bad way, but she was actually a beautiful woman. She wasn't a monster to begin with. So I started that project in 2014. And then when I came back from UK to Portugal, to the Azores, I ended that first part. I always knew that was going to be the first part of that project. And now I feel like a calling, I don't know, a feeling to move on, and I want to do a second part, but based solely on the Portuguese mythology, because I think we hear a lot about the mythologies like from Egypt, the Greeks, the Romans, but many of us don't even know that Portuguese actually had their own gods and goddesses. Even, I believe, some Portuguese don't even know that. So I want to use this project as a way to educate people about our ancient history. And again, not only people from other countries, but our own. And I'm actually thinking of calling it Ophiusa, which is what the Greeks used to call our land back then, which means land of the serpents, which I find quite interesting because I haven't seen any serpents in Portugal. But
They
yeah.
do exist, but not that many.
Yeah, I haven't seen them. But yeah, we used to, it's funny because we used to worship dragons and snakes. So I kind of want to show that, and not just, don't want to show only the goddesses this time. I want to show the whole thing.
Okay, awesome. Stay tuned for this project because it looks extremely original and interesting, and obviously it will have beautiful images. So let's dive into the landscape world. Dear Victor, first of all, big fan of your work, of your dazzling aerial images. I'm an humble collector of Victor's work, and you have been doing these incredible photos from different places, but many of them from Portugal mainland, from Azores, and from Madeira. So obviously, also my question would be, how do you think being a Portuguese and being immersed in the Portuguese culture kind of influences your output, your creations, the way you do your images?
Okay. About my connection with Portugal and my art, I guess that's very easy to see because Portugal has a big heritage linked with the sea and all the exploration era that happened since the 15th century. We have a very rich history in that matter. And besides that, our country, although it's so small, it has such a long stretch of coastline. And if you consider the islands, you can multiply that coastline and we get more than 1,000 miles of coastline. So for me, it was a really easy subject to start capturing and trying to bring some new perspectives of that immense coastline. I initially started with normal photography. I call it normal photography, ground photography, because I do mostly aerial. And since I don't have the talent to get those new perspectives from ground, I derivated to the aerial. And it was easier for me to try to showcase all the beautiful landscape our country has in that way. And I guess that's the biggest connection. You know how Portugal has so much history linked to the sea, and how that shaped our culture, our people, all what we discover around the world. And although we influence a lot of other countries, now we just renegated to our small size. But that is always on the back of our mind. We learn it from school, from history, and I guess that's the main reason why.
Very well. It makes perfect sense. I totally identify with what you are saying. even though we have different technical approaches to photography, I share from your love towards our landscape. I think we have the most majestic monument, which we can call the sea. It's absolutely incredible, magnanimous, and just like you said, we have a huge coastline. We look like a small country, but our coastline is absolutely epic and incredible. I would actually dare to say that we have the most beautiful coastline in the world for photography. I know this is controversial, but I've always defended this, and I still believe it nowadays. And right from the beginning, I also felt this fascination with the sea. I remember being young, I used to do mountain biking, and I would stop in front of our beautiful cliffs overlooking the ocean, and I would just stay there, breathing, meditating, because we just feel this very, very strong connection with the ocean. It's like something that looks infinite, but at the same time we feel part of it, probably related with our heritage, with the discoveries, with everything, but we just feel this deep sense of appreciation and love for it. Also interesting, just on a side note, that was also one of the main reasons that made me start with storytelling upon the creation of my images. My mother is a Portuguese teacher, and she taught me right from the beginning about how fantastic our literature is. We have a very rich story of great authors that, if some of you don't know them, you should search for them. And I just learned how beautiful it was. I learned the value of the famous word that has no translation, the famous saudades, which is some sense of longing, which has no direct translation to other languages. And I also learned about this deep sense of melancholy that the Portuguese usually have, but which is a pleasant melancholy. It's a poetic melancholy. And actually, one of the most famous authors about this kind of writings will be mentioned afterwards when we speak about a very interesting project. So I would also like to ask you something, Victor. I know that you just came from Iceland, which is actually my second favorite country in the world to photograph. Sometimes it's the first. It depends on the weather, on how it treats me. Portugal usually treats us better than Iceland. But I mostly wanted to ask you, because it's such a different landscape reality, how would you compare Iceland to Portugal? And especially, what do you think that makes our landscapes unique when you compare it with the epicness of Iceland?
Okay, that's a tough question. Yeah, for me now, I also think Portugal is the most beautiful one, because Iceland didn't treat me that well for the 10 days I was there. But that doesn't make me forget all the beauty that the country has. The weather was really, really bad. We probably just spent 5 days waiting for the clouds to clear or the rain to go away.
That's typical Iceland, spending a ton of money and more than half the time stuck in the car.
That's true. And snow and wind, but whatever. The beauty was there. We were able to visit some amazing places. I guess the raw beauty of that country has to do with all the volcanic activity and that created the island, that big island. You see places that probably doesn't exist in any other place in the world, and the magnitude of that beauty, it's really what, for the most part of the trip, make me go like open mouth, like that wow factor.
And when you returned to Portugal, how did you look at it? Did it seem kind of smaller in comparison or still beautiful? I'm asking this because I've been often to Iceland, and when I get back, I always get some sort of depersonalization. Then I rediscover the love for our landscapes. Mm-hmm. Do you still feel this is the most beautiful coastline?
Yeah, I still think, because of all the diversity and how I was talking before, the islands enhance that feeling even more because of how diverse the landscape can be. being far in the Atlantic Ocean, all that sense that it gives us. So I guess Portugal, thank you, Matt, has also a lot to give to any visitor, to any tourist that comes here to see the landscaping, that has the love for nature.
Very well, thank you. Let's just move on. I don't know, I have a timer right here to coordinate the time, or Maximilian will kill me. I'm trying to behave. And there's an interesting subject here. I know that when Victor presented himself, he said he has a different job other than photography. But Victor is also a doctor, just like me. And you might wonder, in a 5-person panel, how does it happen to be 2 photographers, which are also doctors, in a small panel? And first of all, I think that shows that we are kind of crazy because we are immersed into the insane NFT space. Usually psychiatrists tend to be a little bit crazy, as you guys know. I don't know, in the case of your specialty, if that also happens. But anyway, unfortunately, probably one of the main reasons that this is happening right now, it's because our national health system is absolutely understaffed. The socioeconomics in Portugal are extremely bad right now, as most of you know. And due to the stress related with our jobs, we just need an outlet. We need to create, we need to photograph, we need to breathe, we need to escape. Otherwise, we just cannot handle it. And considering the wages, I would say that NFTs have this interesting potential to provide some additional income, which for some of us is extremely interesting and empowering. So I'd like to seize the opportunity that we have Bernardo here. I know that this is a subject that interests you a lot, with you being a collector, also a photographer, partially, okay, but a good photographer. So I'd like to ask you, regarding this, the current Portuguese situation, how do you see the NFT world, the NFT space, as a potential tool for empowerment?
Thank you, Jose. So you guys come from the part of the creativity in using Portugal as your background and your subject, in a way. I think I come from the technology perspective, where Portugal doesn't have anything to do with it, unfortunately, in the part of the NFTs. So I see the NFTs as a tool that everyone can use. Is an easy tool for us that are here. We understand how a tool like the NFTs can be a way for us to get together. And like Isabel was saying, like they made a collective of people to try to aim for something. So I see the NFTs as a technology not only that gives us the provenance of any digital asset that we may have, but as well the NFTs as the power, the tool to be able to communicate with each other in a different way. The NFT, these tools of communication as well, I think it gave me, and I think it gives to a lot of people, the decentralization that we, in some aspects, want to bring to the art world. Since the NFT has been, and we had a panel before, and we were discussing how the NFTs took out all the intermediaries of the art, in a way, like the galleries or the museums. And me, as a collector, wearing that hat, I have my own museum. And I can communicate with the people that I love or the art that I love. And the NFT is a way for me to be able to collect something that would not be exposed in any other way. So it's another market, and it helps to develop connections for niche things. And that's what I tried with a lot of artists, where Matt and Victor always come. That is, using NFT as a decentralization tool makes as well possible to reach people on the other corner of the world that have the same taste, or the same objectives, or the same communication on their message for something as niche as, for example, the Portuguese culture. Whenever we talk about with other people from the United States, or they don't even sometimes realize where Portugal is. And the NFTs, I managed to communicate one by one with people that I love and show them the culture that we have in our country. And that's more or less what we try to do with a community that is called B-Side. And we came up with a project that was how different photographers or different...
You are going to ruin my next question.
Go for it, go for it.
Because I still need to change the slide. But yeah, you were going to talk about the project, yeah. So yes. I would just like to introduce it. And I know that you are extremely passionate about it.
People can tell.
And people can feel the enthusiasm. And yeah, Bernardo has founded a beautiful project called Portugal Sea. I'll put the video right now in loop, showing the images that compose it. So I would like you to speak about it, about its main influence, and obviously, in the end, also hear Matt speaking about his participation in this work, and would love to know why you fell in love with this project. So feel free to speak.
Thank you. So after being in the space for a year and a half, I found my niche. I found the place where I feel comfortable, and that place is photography. Is where I can justify what I was spending, in a way, and I started to create connections, and I started to think that it would be beautiful to try to impose people to think about my country, and the best way to do it was to try to challenge them in trying to interpret a poem that says a lot to us Portuguese that we learn in school. And my idea, more than idea, it was an experiment. I wanted to see what would happen if I pick a poem that is so close to us and send that poem to Armenia, Rant is here, to Brazil, Bruno is here, they are part of the project as well, Time is in Italy as well, from Iran. And sending a poem that is so close and that we are taught in how to interpret that. From school, we learn that poem and we learn the history, the Portuguese history, and we can match what we feel about that poem. But trying to take out the context of a poem and send to people that have sometimes no idea what is Portuguese culture, and tell them, look, just read this poem, interpret the way you want, and just bring me something back. And that was the main thing. So we picked Fernando Pessoa as one of our biggest ambassadors in poetry, and in our culture is one of our biggest ambassadors. And I found a good translation, which is super difficult to translate sometimes Portuguese to other languages, and in poetry even worse. So I would never try to attempt that. So I found a good translation and sent to them. And a lot of people, I don't know, Matt can talk a little bit about that, but a lot of people found themselves a little bit lost. So what should I do about this? And it was completely a blank canvas. And I just said, just read it, and with your experience, your background, your life in your own country, just tell me what you think about this. Tell me what you feel whenever you have this. And then we had, in my opinion, amazing art coming from, in my opinion, the best photographers that we have in the space now. We have, you can see in here, we have from Alejandro Cartagena, that is the guy that founded Fellowship. We have Anacondo, that is very well known. And what I wanted to do as well is put everyone in the same level. So there are people here that sell and have floors that are completely unrealistic for a lot of people. And we have people here that no one knows. No one knows. There are people that cannot even speak English. And at the same time, this was a project, and because I'm always in connection with other collectors, and main collectors like Chikai or Jean-Michel or Milhamo Matt or whoever, and try to bring these people that cannot reach cannot reach those collectors now. So in a way was trying to push me, my culture, into the space, see how beautiful, how tiny we are, and how can we do so many beautiful things that you are not aware of, and trying to put that on the main stage. And it was an experiment, and it was super fun to do it, and that was the main thing. I created so many connections with so many people, and it's selling. If you guys want to buy it, the QR code in there, and we are going to try to do a book about it whenever we sell out. So a book that is, the objective is to show the poem, and then on the description of each photo, we have what made that artist to interpret the poem in that way. What did they take from that? Was it a phrase? It was a word? It was the sea? So it was completely open to interpretation, in a way. So this is our project, and I hope the community, the B-side, I'm going to try to continue to bring Portuguese culture to the NFT space in the way I can. You know, I'm not going to be able to do the photography that you do, you know, and show the landscapes and how beautiful we are, but I'm going to try to be able to bring small patches of culture, small artists from here that don't have a worldwide stage like we can have here with NFC, and that's what we are doing.
Yeah, actually, your project has a tremendous value. I think it can be greatly expanded, just like you said, to other kinds of ventures, always based on the Portuguese culture. And what's interesting, and this relates with what I spoke at the beginning, this completes the full circle of cultural influence, in that we spoke about how, to as Portuguese, our culture influences our art expression. And then you gave us a perfect example of how the Portuguese culture can go and be freed to the outside world and create so many incredible things just inspired by it. So I would like to hear, Matt, obviously. I would like to know, how did you feel about working on this project? I know that you fell in love with it. You have a connection with Portugal, so tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know the background, my background to it, and when Bernie came to us with this idea, I jumped at it for many, many different reasons. I actually studied Portuguese culture at university, so I have a degree in Spanish and Portuguese, and the mechanism by which I learnt about Portuguese culture was mainly through literature. So being given a poem as the kind of creative vessel, if you will, for a project like this, one, it was a great idea. Two, I'd not come across that before. And three, it felt very natural to me that it was through the literature that I discovered a lot about Portugal and Brazil. So yeah, I jumped at it, and I love the idea of having poetry as the source of the single source for various different interpretations. I think there were 27 different photographers in the end that took part in this project. Is that right? And as Bernie says, from all over the world. So it was a joy. It was a joy to do. Personally, for me, I had been in a creative rut as well. And this happens to artists. You go through periods of high productivity and then periods of no to zero productivity and low inspiration. So being offered this inspiration was a challenge for me, mentally, emotionally, and artistically. It came just at the right time, and I'm really happy to say that it's pushed me on to another level creatively. That now means that I've pursued a completely different method of creating art through blended film photography, and this was the first time that I did it was for this project. So yeah, it's given me a lot, is the short answer.
That's great to know, and most of all, this just shows that not only Bernardo's magic, but also Fernando Pessoa's magic through his poem actually changed the way you express yourself. This is extremely interesting. You probably knew the poem before since you studied Portuguese culture. It's a beautiful poem, just like Bernardo says. It's hard to translate, and for the Portuguese, it's strange to read it in English, but then you get used to it. So just loved hearing about it. And honestly, I think we have spoken about most important subjects. I wanted to ask the rest of the panel if you have something to add before I open the questions to the audience.
Could I just add something about the poem?
Definitely can, of course.
Because, as you say, if you have not read the poem, I suggest that you do. It's called O Salty Sea in English, or Mar Português in, I don't know. Yep. Yeah, or Mar Português in Portuguese. And there's a couple of lines in the poem which goes back to your point, talking about patriarchy. This is a nice full circle thing. And actually, for me, it was the opposite of the patriarchy that interested me within this poem. Is quantas mulheres, quantas mães, quantas filhas, how many mothers, how many daughters have to, I'm paraphrasing here, sit and wait and look out to sea, waiting for their husbands to return or their children to return. That was the visual notion for me that I picked up on in my piece, was actually the feminine role of the sea. And I've, like you guys, always been drawn to the sea. It's my vitamin C.
Vitamin C, that was a good...
You see what I did there? Yeah. And to come back to another point that you said about saudade. Saudade is a very, I'm saying it in the Brazilian way, but it's a very unique word. There is no translation for this word in any other language or culture. And to me, to find a way of expressing that visually was an amazing challenge to undertake, but it was the one notion that really I pulled from the poem to kind of go, how do I express this, or how can I attempt to express this visually? And yeah, it's full of inspiration, that poem. I love it.
Beautiful, and I really hope that this gets sold out so that the book is published, because I would love to see the interpretation of the other artists.
Yeah, you can check on the descriptions.
Okay,
on
it's
Foundation,
there.
The description on the site is their statement. It's not
Okay,
description,
perfect.
It's a statement about it.
Because in your case, Matt, you had the connection to Portugal, so I'm wondering how someone who knew nothing about the culture, how they interpreted it, but I will read it. So I'd like to open the questions to the audience.
I just wanted to say one more thing.
Okay,
sorry.
of course.
And this is not so much about the Portuguese, but we were speaking on another panel here about how the marketing is growing, and how do you need to do marketing as artists, and how it's difficult sometimes if you are not in the right circles to be able to sell. And I would challenge everyone that is in that position to try to look at what they love and try to challenge other people. Because at the same time, if you think about it, the artists that are in this space, they need to be open-minded. They are open-minded people. Otherwise, they would be sticking to what they were doing, and they were not coming here and experiment with NFTs and with this new tool that no one knows how is going to end. So if you are stuck in your own circle and you want to expand, just challenge people. And that's what I've done. And I'm so happy that I did that, because I was a collector, then I had to stop being a collector for several reasons, and I found how to continue to work in the space and being challenged every day by everyone. And that's the beauty, it's the connections, and that's how we should try to make the space to work, to connect everyone that have less exposure, let's say, and challenge all the other artists that you know. And in the end, it's an experiment, and if you fail, it was beautiful the same. And you try again.
And that's one of the core principles of NFTs, which is exactly giving stage to people who didn't have it before, and trying to bypass gatekeeping and making it accessible to everyone in the world. So thank you so much for the inspiration. And I'd just like to know if someone from the audience, if anyone wants to ask either a Portuguese artist that might be sitting here that wants to add something regarding how the Portuguese culture inspired all of you, or some international artist that actually felt this inspiration. So anyone wants to ask any questions? You can raise your hands if someone wants to. Okay. Sorry? Okay, we have two.
Yeah, we'll manage to. Actually, one of the photos is from Sean Moreton, and he lives in the middle of Canada, like 2 days away from the sea, and he had to do a photo about the sea, you know, and what he made, and it's one of the photos, is he has put the poem inside the water and just freezed it. So in a way, he tried to bring his Canada thing that they are all freezing all the time in there, and he tried to bring the poem. So it's one of the photos you can read the poem in there. Sorry? Yes.
Yeah, I think we have someone else that wants to ask a question. Someone very special.
Thank you so much, José. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Very beautiful panel, and one doesn't often get to hear about Portugal in this space. So it's a breath of fresh air, especially being in Lisbon. My question is actually directed to you and Victor. I do a bit of landscape photography as well, and I want to know why you think your reasons for the Portuguese coastline being one of the best, or actually the best in the world. I'd like to know why you think so.
Okay. Besides what I said before, for the coastline being so huge, it's the diversity. One of the photos, the photo that I used for the B-side, it will cycle through there. It's a top-down where you see the sea, the sand, and some fossilized sand cliffs, and it shows how different the landscape can be in just one place, you know, because you have the sea just shaping the sand, and then you have the cliffs that can transmit that higher ground, but the resilience to the time. And that happens all around the country, you know, that diversity and how you can interpret those views. I guess that's what the main reason why the landscape is so unique.
Yeah, and oops, okay. And actually, there's, just like you say, the coastline is huge, and as you go further south, it starts getting these huge cliffs, beautiful stacks in the middle of the ocean, different erosion patterns everywhere. It's like pure sculpture, pure natural architecture. You can easily get lost. When I started into photography, I just discovered all these hidden places of Portugal. Not just the sea, also our beautiful dark skies, our beautiful forests, everything else. But the sea is so, so majestic. Anyone who spends enough time venturing, grabbing a caravan, ideally, and witnessing several sunsets and sunrises on the most special places, we will see places that are to be found nowhere. So this is probably why we still are addicted to showing the beauty of our landscapes. Anyone else has a question? Okay, so I think we can finish this panel. Thank you so much for your presence. Loved everything you said. Thank you for your presence too. You can finally go and have some lunch. And very nice to have you here. And see you next time, hopefully next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Obrigado. Thank you.